Welcome back to the WTF Sunderland podcast as we approach the completely pointless final game of the season against QPR. Sunderland continued to lose at the weekend as we surrendered to Oxford United and lost 2-0, but we'll hope to be handed a little bit of momentum ahead of the playoff this week as we welcome a QPR side in a little bit of turmoil. And as always, the best part of when we play QPR is when we invite Clive from the excellent LoftForWords podcast on. I'm not going to lie, the only thing that excites me about it is our chat, but how are you, mate?
Yeah, mate. Ever a pleasure. And like you say, QPR are imploding again. So yeah, looking forward to going through it with you as always.
It's funny, it's like I think I messed up the intro a little bit there, but I don't care enough to change it. So sorry if any listeners wanted a perfect intro, I just couldn't be bothered. Look, we'll start from the top. A 5-0 home defeat to QPR. I'd normally ask how the performance was, but that's shit. But how shit was it?
Well, look, Burnley are the best.
Mm,
That's the best team we've played at this level for a long time. Probably since Rafa Benitez was messing around with your friends down the road. It's our biggest defeat since we lost 6-0 to that team. So you've got to take your hat off to Burnley. They were very, very good. Just the physicality and the work rate and the pace and the just everything about them. It was like they had 14 players, and that Esteve at the back is just an absolute monster. So sometimes you just have to put your hand up and say opposition very good. The thing that puzzles me about Burnley is if you've got that team at your disposal, why spend so many months grinding out 0-0s with Oxford and Stoke and Derby? We got a 0-0 at Turf Moor in the first game, unbelievably. Like, why would you do that? If your team can play like that, just let them off the leash, you know. So yeah, you got to say, but we were awful, and we've been having a difficult time for a while. The manager's, it seems, on his way out. Most of the players are injured. We've had like 10 or 11 injuries all season. And it's just all coming to a head now. The relationships behind the scenes have obviously not been right, really since last summer, I think. And it's all coming to a head, sadly, publicly. A lot of leaks coming out of the clubs on both sides, on the manager's side and on the chief exec side. So it's just a bit of a mess, really. What was already a slog of a season that you were just looking forward to getting it over is now going to, it seems, drag into the summer with all this mess going on.
you mentioned about Cifuentes there. I think I've been on holiday in Oslo this week. Not that I like to brag, but I did see pop on Twitter, and I was like, "Oh, Burnley won. Oh, Cuba. Oh God. Okay." And then I think it was like less than a day later, Cifuentes is speaking to an unnamed EFL Championship club, and I thought, "Oh, well, that's rubbing salt into wounds." But I thought, "Oh, good. That means we've got things to chat about on the preview show." Good manager, highly rated, done a decent job with the circumstances. What's the situation?
Well, yeah, I mean, I really like him and rate him. I think he's saved us from ourselves twice over. He took over the 2 year cliff edge that we went off after getting rid of Mark Warburton, and we ended up with Gareth Ainsworth and his cowboy boots, and won, what was it, two of the first 16 or 17 games last season. I thought we were down then. To come into that and take that team and survive, with games to spare and really in quite some style, beating Leicester, beating Leeds to stay up. You know, I really rated him after that. This season's been very difficult. We once again, I think, won one of the first 16 or 17 games. So again, we've stayed up with games to spare, which I think is remarkable. And I guess, if you wanted to be critical, you could say, well, he's had a full season, and that's what he did with it. He won one of his first 16 like Ainsworth did. Personally, I think it's more the recruitment last summer was deficient. The team's got issues basically in every position apart from centre back and goalkeeper. It's poor in both full back positions. It's got a central midfield that just refuses to turn round and play in a forward direction. It's got 5 midgets that all want to play 10, and it's got the worst 4 strikers in the league, probably. So it's also got no pace, it's slow, and it's tiny. So you have to play Jimmy Dunn at right back, so you've got someone that can win headers. So you add all that up, then you put the injuries into it. Our head of performance, which is a very Jake Humphreys title for the guy that oversees the sort of medical and the physical. He works remotely from Dubai. and
Oh.
we've had 10, 11 injuries basically for every game this year. You add all that up, we've survived again with games to spare. I think he's probably saved us from ourselves again there. So I like him a lot. You know, others not so much. I think there's going to be fault on both sides in any messy divorce. I think he's been putting it around for other jobs. I think he put it around for the Sunderland job last summer, maybe Burnley as well, and Norwich. And I think that sort of damaged relations a bit. They've been butting heads over recruitment and, like I say, this ridiculous situation with the head of performance. They've just fallen out, basically. It seems to me, which will lead to a parting of the ways. And I wish they'd just get on with it now, because now you've got this situation where, there's a leak last week, which I think pretty obviously came from the manager's side, and now there's another leak this week, which I think is pretty obviously come from the club side, and it's just sort of childish. And the losers are, us, the supporters, the silly sods that are coming up to Sunderland this week, watching our club tear itself apart again. So yeah, it's difficult.
Um, I don't think anyone likes to see like, for example, I'd be devastated if Job goes in the summer or Chris Rigg. But would I understand it? Yeah, I understand that players want to play in the Premier League and X, Y, and Z. Can you understand why Cifuentes would leave QPR?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, QPR's in a tough spot because of the ground and income and things like that. It costs us about 2 million quid a month just to keep going. That's what the owners put in a month. The FFP situation means you're never going to be able to do too much with a team unless we sell someone for 20 million quid. And we did do that with Eze and then spent the money on Tap, basically, which is very us. So we might get some money with an Eze sell on. We get some money from that when Palace sell him, and that might open. But in general, I know we used to be the team that chucked silly money around. So I'm not asking anyone to cry as a river or whatever. We were the team with the £80 million wage bill once. But we're not anymore, and we just can't compete. You look at that Burnley team at the weekend, and we're a million miles off that. We can't compete there. So, the manager, he probably knows we've got a ceiling, and he's very ambitious. If you look at his career, it's been carefully managed, and he sort of places 18 months, 2 years, and then hops. He's a bit sort of like a monkey. He never lets go of one branch until he's got hold of another branch. We got him from Hammarby, and he'll probably go on somewhere else. I don't really begrudge that. I begrudge the way that Mick Beale did it. Obviously, coming out and give it the chat without going raking over old graves. I was pretty pissed about that. I do kind of understand it, but it's just not being done again in a particularly edifying way. And I'd like it to be. I'd just like it to be over. I'd almost like them to come out today and say, "Look, this is happening. We've agreed that we're shaking hands. We've agreed the payoff. Last game Saturday, or caretaker Saturday, or whatever." Because I just don't want to. I just don't want to see it go how I think it's going to go over this week and next. And it's already started. Really, it's just the fans. It's not fair on the fans, I don't think.
That's the only people it affects, really, because when you're looking at final game, it doesn't really matter. Our games that come after that are the ones that matter for QPR. You can't go down. You can't really go much further than 15th, 14th, or whatever. I haven't even looked, to be completely honest. If he's gonna go, it's better for him to go sooner, so you know who's going to be leading the club forward. I remember after we lost. God, we've mentioned Michael Beale twice. Shit. Sorry. Player underscore underscore ID. When he left, I think the 120 odd days or whatever it was from him leaving to Regis Labrise coming in. By the time we got Regis Labrise, you were like, okay, I don't know who this is, but I don't really care. At least I know who's in the seat and moving forward. Like, I'm not really that bothered who it is. So if you have a thing that drags on and on and on, and you know he's not going to be there, it's going to be a total pain in the arse. But random question that I haven't even wrote down, just came into my head: is Marty Cifuentes just a less cool Danny Rule? Because I think he is.
There's so many comparisons between the two. I think us and Chef Wednesday were the bottom two when they took over, and they took over basically within a week or so of each other, and the trajectory has followed, pretty much on par since. And obviously, Danny Rall, I think, has saved Sheffield Wednesday from themselves because, the issue there is they've got bloody Derek Chanzeri running the gaff, and he's an absolute megalomaniac, like
Poor
disaster zone,
bastards.
isn't he? So, and Danny Rall, I think, is going to Southampton. Is he this summer, or he'll certainly leave and get a better job, and that's what Cifuentes is pitching for. Personally, I think Danny Rall's slightly better, but um,
Looking or like management style?
just I think he's probably a better manager. But I mean, yeah, and the hair, obviously. I mean,
Yeah.
Cifuentes, his hair game is strong. Although when he arrived, he had a little fleck of grey in his fringe, and we were like, QPR, QPR is going to spread that like bloody Japanese knotweed. And sure enough, 18 months later, he's completely grey. I mean, the situation at Chef Wednesday, like I say, is obviously that megalomaniac Derek running the job. The situation at QPR is that, our owners are very benevolent. They put that £2 million in a month, but, they don't really know football or know what they're doing, and they've made a lot of mistakes. It's the opposite of Chanzeri. I mean, they know that they don't know football, whereas Chanzeri thinks he does, I think. The situation at QPR at the minute, and I mentioned this last time we won, is what they're susceptible to people with good chat talking themselves into jobs at the club. All the way through when Tony Fernandez was running it and now Ruben's running it. That's happened all the time. Like we lost Warnock right at the start of this ownership because we tried to buy Alex from Chelsea in January. His agent was Keir Jarabkin. Keir Jarabkin was also Mark Hughes' agent. He gave him the big chat, and before we knew it, Warnock, instead of getting a centre back from Chelsea, had lost his job, and Mark Hughes was our manager. We then followed that up with Harry Redknapp, who's obviously king of the bloody chat, isn't he? I'll hang out my car window and this everyman routine. And that's happened repeatedly, like all the way through the ownership. We had Ian Holloway doing a reasonable job. Steve McLaren talked himself into the job. Les Ferdinand, who I like and I thought did a reasonable gig as director of football. But again, that was, the striker coach at Tottenham talking himself into the director of football role at QPR. And Mick Beale, of course, king of the PowerPoint presentation, talks himself into a job. So we're really susceptible to people with good chat. And what we've done, and I still can't get my head around this, is we've taken our director of football role, which Les had been doing for 8 years, and we've taken our chief exec role, which was held by a guy called Lee Hughes, who had been the chief exec at Burnley and Southampton and Fulham and Leicester. So whatever you thought of him, he's obviously quite experienced. We've taken those two roles, we've put them together, and we've given it to a 27-year-old who's never done either job before. And so he is basically running the entire club on both sides, on the football side and the business side. This is the guy that I think Cifuentes is butting heads with and has fallen out with, and that relationship has disintegrated. But I just, QPR is a really difficult club to run. It's got all these FFP problems. It's got a League One stadium, more or less a League One average attendance in a really expensive part of the country, lots of FFP restrictions. A lot of people have struggled to run QPR. The McLaren, whatever you think of him, was a former England manager. He couldn't do it. Lee Hughes has kept it just about going. Mark Warburton did okay, Les did okay, these people, but it's a really difficult club to run. I just can't get my head around why you would give that job to someone that's never ever done that job before. Like, however good his chat is, and look, I hope it works out because as long as QPR are winning, I don't care. But it just looks insane to me.
It's just too many, as you said before, Jake Humphreys in the world, I think sometimes. I remember you said, I can't remember if it was on air slash or off air, but I'd heard that rumor that Beale got the appointment, Beale got the interview, sorry, and you went, if you get him in a room with a PowerPoint presentation, you're fucked.
Yeah, so well, no, some a friend of another manager who'd previously worked with him was in for the QPR job that summer, and they'd said as soon as they heard Mick Beale was going for an interview, oh, I won't be getting that then. If Mick gets you in the room, he'll talk like he could sell sand in the desert. He's so good in the room. And I'd been to fan meetings with Mick Beale, and I get it. Like he's a very impressive individual in that circumstance. So yeah.
Damn. Shibby can't do anything else. But looking at QPR, I remember speaking to you last year and you said, look, my hope is if we stay up, which at the time was, I think, I can't quite remember when we played each other. I think it was like the April time you said, if we stay up, maybe a bit of hope we can go on and do stuff. The FFP will be a little bit less, but in a way, you haven't really changed, as you said before. You're in this more or less the same position without being a total disaster. You're 15th, few games to spare before the season's going, but there's no real progression. What is QPR's outlook, or what is the? I mean, I don't know why I'm asking you, but what is the plan in your opinion?
I don't know. No, I don't know anymore. I was reasonably optimistic last year. I was like, we'll get the overspend from 21-22 off our 3-year cycle. We've got what looks to be a great manager, like more FFP headroom to spend. We can have a decent go at this, move off into proper mid-table, sort of 10th, 11th, that sort of position. And in the end, I'm just grateful that we've stayed up, because I'm very surprised that we have stayed up, to be honest. Like, you win one of your first 16 games, and then whatever run of form we're on now, it's like 2 wins in 10 again. Like, how can you go on those two different runs and stay up? So yeah, I don't know. I was optimistic coming into this season, but now, like I say, the mess, and it seems like Cifuentes is leaving, and the money we spent last summer. We did 10 signings from all around Europe, based largely on data and analytics, and I just think we're not that clever. We tell ourselves, oh, this is great, and we're not that club, and I think they underestimated championship experience, the physicality of the league, need for pace, and things like that. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not optimistic at all anymore. This time last year, I was like, oh, if we stay up, we'll be all right. We'll be all right. But I don't feel like that anymore, sadly.
It's funny, we had that conversation moving to Sunderland again off air when we've lost 4 in a row. I don't need to tell Sunderland fans that. Like, they know that. And you were speaking to me before about how QPR had a similar predicament in times gone past, which I actually found really interesting because a lot of the comparisons recently with us being in the playoffs is, well, Southampton lost 3 of the last 4, and that's the kind of hope that you're clinging on to. But it's something that most people won't really be aware of. And I can't even remember the year it was. I'm sure it was about 2011, 12. You'll be able to tell me. But you had a similar situation to Harry Redknapp to what we're going through at the minute. We need a bit of hope. I'm not going to lie. Even I'm losing a bit of hope. Can you advise us of what happened, what went down, how it transpired, and why Sunderland are definitely going up?
Well, yeah, the year we won the playoffs, 2013-14, with the Bobby Zamora goal with the last kick, we set off like a train that season. I think at one point we went 10 games through the autumn without even conceding a goal. And then we had a real bad run over Christmas, and we ended up fourth in like January, February. And obviously, it's so far away from the automatics, we were never going to get it. But so far into the playoffs, we were obviously in the playoffs. We were in the playoffs. We knew we were going to finish fourth from February, and the performances through the last 3 or 4 months of that season were appalling. And the crowd actually, I remember a game at Charlton we lost, and the crowd actually turned and got really aggy. It was a really unpleasant time to follow QPR. Like, they lost every away game. I think we won something like 4 of our last 15 or 16 games that season. Really poor. Like, and Redknapp just don't give a shit, does he? So we then got in the playoffs, and we got Wigan, who were flying, and went through the semi-finals just drawing. We basically tossed the away one off, drew it 0-0, put 10 people on the goal line to make it a one-off at Loftus Road, which we then won in extra time. Charlie Austin turned it on and scored twice. And then obviously had this amazing final where Derby just absolutely battered us throughout, and we got a man sent off and then scored in the last minute. I mean, maybe it was just written. I mean, the other thing that was in our favour, like, we did have an £84 million wage bill that year. It was like, it's the biggest wage bill that the Championship's ever seen at that point. I think Leeds have gone past it now. The final, I think, was a £15 million wage bill for Derby, Steve McLaren's Derby, versus £84 million of salary from QPR. So it wasn't a fair fight. We basically tossed off the last 4 months of the season, and then when we needed to turn it on at the end, we've got Charlie Austin up front, so it turns out we're all right after all. Like, so I don't know how much it applies to Sunderland, but yeah, we were that theory that it's good to have form going into playoffs didn't apply for us because we were absolute crap for 4 months going into it.
Looking at Sunderland's chances, look, I was kind of comfortable and calm after like the third defeat, which would have been, God, they're all molding on each other, to be honest, at the minute. Swansea, it's actually gone up my head, I don't care. But the Oxford game, because we had more players back, because it was close to our team that you'd expect in the playoffs, and because Regis had said, oh, we're in playoff mode now, and then we just contrived to put in our worst performance of the season, give or take, it's kind of battered my confidence a bit. So this is maybe a question where there's a bit of pressure on you, actually, to be honest. But What do you make of like Sunderland's chances? Because I think it's really easy to get bogged down in your own shit, if you know what I mean. Like, because you follow it, and we're idiots that care about, our mental health and whatever goes based on what our stupid, overpaid millionaires do in a pitch. We're now at a point where I think Sunderland probably feel worse off than we actually are. From the outside looking in, how do you rate Sunderland's chances of going up?
Well, I mean, Sheffield United, I think, are the best team in the playoffs, but you've got to wonder how they are mentally, having been part of that top three all season, and then having a week where you're playing, what was it, Millwall, Plymouth, and somebody else down the bottom, and they lost all three to just drop out of that title race. I know they've put a couple of results on the board since, but Wilder seems really aggy to me, even by his standards. He's moaning, groaning, and accusing people of over celebrating when he's the manager that stands on the table and sings about sausage rolls and whatever. Like, so I wonder what's going on there and sort of what state they're in. Bristol City, we played the other week, and they were pretty good. Bird and Earthy behind the striker who look good players. But I think they've only won one out of 12, 13, 14 away games, something like that. Um, so they're in, are they going to win the playoffs? I don't know. Coventry, I think if they get in, that's where the danger is. I thought they were underperforming massively at the start of the season. I fancied them in August to be in the playoffs. So with the players they've got, you know, momentum's been building there for a while. I guess Coventry are probably the team I would fear the most in there. Um, but yeah, I don't know about Sheffield United's mental state, and I don't know if Bristol City are good enough. And if you look at the chasing pack, I mean, Millwall have come on pretty strong, but I think I'd be surprised if Millwall were a threat in the playoffs. And Blackburn are just a circus act, aren't they? So you never know really what to expect from them. So I don't know. I don't know. Like, I can see why you guys would be worried because like you lose four in a row, you lose to Oxford. Oxford are the worst team we've played. So I don't know. It's we'll have to see.
There is that element of Millwall as well, which might be famous last words. Alex Neil's won three playoffs, one in Scotland, two in England. Then he sneaks in on the final. Yeah, that's the one that concerns me. And I'm not going to lie and say that Coventry don't concern me, but I've already said on the podcast, bring me the head of Coventry City at least twice. So I'm going to have to just continue with that and kind of plow on my positivity into. Yeah, it's fine if we get Coventry. It's probably not. What's what's really bugging me at the minute, and this is more like a football question than anything, to be honest. I'm curious on your take of promotion because I was sitting with a Liverpool fan and actually two Liverpool fans, and we were discussing about the Premiership, watching Premiership highlights on the TV in Oslo on Saturday, and we were watching Ipswich, Leicester, Southampton, and I was like, God, they're awful. They're absolutely awful. And they're trying their best. They're doing everything they possibly can. And Ipswich were brilliant last season in the Championship. Leicester pretty much walked it up until a certain period of time when they had like a little tiny wobble. And Southampton were arguably the third or fourth best team with an identity, a playing style under Russell Martin, and all that kind of stuff. And you watch them and you just think they've not had a hope in hell's chance since about August. And I just feel like sometimes what's it that famous saying is the journey's better than the destination, and that
Yeah.
kind of concerns me a little bit because I'm starting to think, if I'm honest, I'm starting to fall out of the love for football a little bit, which is a terrible thing to say on a football-related podcast, which you want people to listen to, but I am because my head's going, oh my God, I really want that day at Wembley because what an amazing day it would be to get promoted, and then I go, oh shit, then we've got to play our biggest rivals who are bankrolled by like a entire country that has horrendous records in certain areas. So we might not win those games. That could be a bad day. Oh God, we might get hammered like 8-0 off Southampton. Not Southampton, like 8-0 like we did off Southampton that one time. I'm like, do I want to get promoted? Then I'm like, well, I want the day. Is football knackered? Is promotion just a poison chalice anyway?
Well, that's sort of word for word how I feel about the whole thing. Yeah, I don't. I used to be the one that just watched every minute of every game.
Yeah.
Thursday night, I just had football on all the time. I had a subscription to everything and whatever. I can't really remember the last time I sat all the way through a Premier League game. I find the sort of style of play unwatchable. This boring, everybody drills within a minute of their life. Everybody has to play like Pep Guardiola. You know, the sort of slow backwards and sideways and possession. I just find it incredibly dull. And VAR has just absolutely killed it for me. Like something vaguely exciting finally happens. Some prick with a laptop has to go through it on Microsoft Paint and draw some lines on it to make sure we're all okay. I pretty much gave up after. I know you guys don't like Coventry, but Coventry come from 3-0 down in an FA Cup semi-final against Man United and win 4-3 in the last minute of extra time. And somebody takes that moment and draws lines on it and says, "Oh, actually, if you look just here earlier in the move, this guy's like his foot is slightly in front of that guy's foot. So you can't have that. I'm afraid." I basically gave up on football at that point. Um, Championship's obviously got no VAR, but it's got this sort of ridiculous situation you've got where, if it's 0-0 away or you're 1-0 up, the goalkeeper sits down, every substitution has to take hours. So yeah, I feel very much like you do, about it in general. The Premier League, I know everybody's looking like the Championship teams came straight back the last couple of seasons, but Brighton, Brentford, Forest, a lot of the teams that are at the top end have come from the Championship or lower and have, built. And Forest look like they're having an incredible time. Brighton have been playing European games with Ajax. I would kill for QPR to have one season in that poxy Europa Conference League. Like, give me the moodiest group stage you like. I want to go to the Estonia. I want to go to Azerbaijan. Like, just one season of that with QPR, I'd absolutely love. So it's not like teams haven't gone up there and had a good time. From our point of view, I think we sort of need to go up and just for the money, just to clear our FFP situation, and then come back. But last time we went up there, we spunked all the money on Joey Barton and people like that, and came back in an even worse state. So I don't know. I do feel a lot like you. I feel very disillusioned with it. But then I don't know. Talk to a Brighton fan. Yeah, I remember seeing Brighton play league games at Scunny. So and now they're playing Ajax. I bet they're having a whale of a time. So it is easy to, be morose and down about it. If Sunderland went up and started qualifying for Europe and getting to cup semi-finals or whatever, I'm sure he'd be loving life. But I do get what you're saying.
Yeah, it just feels like it's a million miles away, and it does feel difficult. And I think previously, like when I was a kid and we went up in 99, 98, 99, and we had 105 points. Okay, we absolutely beasted the league that year. We destroyed it. But I felt like, oh, we could get into Europe, and look, we were one place off, but at one point we were close to the top of the league, and Phillips and Quinn adapted well, and you could do that these days in a way as brilliant as it was, and I agree with you on the Coventry thing. I don't like Coventry. I've admitted that, but I was kind of let down when that goal got disallowed. I was in Washington as it was at the time and watching it. And when it went in, the whole bar went up. A little bit like I don't really like Manchester United, but I celebrated Harry Maguire's header the other week because it was like a celebration for football. Like what a brilliant comeback! But then I feel like Leicester winning the league, which was amazing in what 2014, has properly killed the Premier League because the top four or anyone that can get bankrolled by loads of money refuse to let that happen again. And there's part of me where I'm like, oh, I really hope we turn it on in the playoffs and get promoted. But I'm actually just hoping for the day at Wembley and a good day, so to speak. So yeah, but anyway, there's a game this weekend which isn't at Wembley and isn't
Oh
in the
yeah, I forgot
playoffs.
about that.
Do you remember that? How do you see it going? Do you
Nil
care?
nil,
Yeah,
nil
nil
nil.
nil.
Let's just get out of there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I suspect it'll be even worse than last year's classic.
Oh God.
I mean, let's just see what QPR team turns up. I mean, after the weekend, there's not many of ours are going to be here next season. They're clearly checked out. There's loads of them injured. We don't even know if the manager's going to be there on Saturday. I wouldn't imagine that we're going to turn up wholly committed and concentrated on the job in hand. Sounds like you lot are in a similar sort of situation where minds are elsewhere. So yeah, 0-0, and let's get it over with as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I think nil nil as well, but I've just remembered callback might be there, so there's the day's entertainment.
Well, he looked like he was trying to get sent off at the weekend. Him and Harrison Ashby, who's obviously on loan from Newcastle. But Harrison Ashby sticking the nut on Burnley players with 10 minutes to go, 4-0 down. I'm like, you don't want to play at Sunderland next week. That's like, if I'm going to Sunderland next week, you guys have got to go. So yeah, Cifuentes actually took Ashby off, so it looks like he is going to have to. He is going to have to play. But yeah, I'm not. I'm going with fairly low expectations.
Yeah, same actually. I'll go 0-0. Why not? Clean sheet. Positives.
Yeah, just
I,
a shot on target would be nice after the weekend.
I think that's a perfect way to end it. Thanks very much, Clive. Cheers, mate.
No worries. See you. Well,
Mm.
I hopefully won't see you next season from your point of view, but yeah,
See you in a couple of seasons if that's the case.
yeah. See you the season after.